the Special Economic Zone Authority and the board through the ministry organized the SEZ Summit. And in that SEZ Summit, it was attended by international experts, renowned experts, in how to develop SEZs across the country. And one of those is how to regulate SEZs. And it's important that there is credible entities that regulate SEZs and also give confidence to investors that are coming into country. So as a mandated authority, we have been, through the Mara Barroso government, introduced the Act back in 2019. And it is a great piece of legislation that was passed in Parliament, and a very progressive legislation that will support foreign direct investment coming into country. So one of them is to create a single window for which foreign investors can come to and ensure that there is an ease of doing business in our country. So help our investors come into country, invest. So it's important that we learn from those global practice, standard practice, and that is one single regulator, and that is why the Special Economic Zone Authority Act was established back then. The second important aspect of that is, as I mentioned, the single window entity that was created, and that is to support the regulators that are on the ground, such as Customs, IRC, the commissions that regulate certain aspects of business. And each of these big business, these regulators are connected to the Special Economic Zone via what they call the competent agency agreement. And that is done through the Special Economic Zone, and it's legislated by Act as an instrument to support businesses that are coming into our country. So that is number two. We are setting up those MOUs with different competent agencies to support the investors that are coming through. And the Special Economic Zone Authority, through the Act, is the mandated entity that creates those competent, supports competent agencies to implement SEZs in our country. The third part is the creation of the Act. The provisions is very clear that the Special Economic Zone Authority is the only mandated entity, like I said, that creates SEZs. And there's provisions 16 and the other provisions within the Act that is that ensures that any SEZs created in the districts or in the provinces must come through the Special Economic Zone Authority, so through the various steps, application processes, so that they can benefit from the incentives that are within the Act. The last part that I would like to talk about is we would like to reassure our provinces and our districts, those who have already indicated interest in setting up SEZs. The application process and the procedures have been outlined during the summit, and that also have been circulated to all our provinces that are intending to set up SEZs, such as Ihu SEZ, the TMIZ in Madang, the River Rice that is in the pipeline, and various others that are coming on board, also supported by public enterprise like KCHL and KPHL. And also there's interest from certain enterprises in Gazelle and elsewhere, so that we can support them set up SEZ. So those provisions, those applications are in the pipeline. There's provisions there. So the business is open. We are open to receive applications and vet applications so that we can issue licenses, and they can, the enterprises out there can benefit from the tax exemptions and the incentives that are available as we speak, that are found in the Act. So it is quite clear and very, very clear that there are certain incentives that can be granted to our enterprises and investors that are coming immediately upon the approval and granting of our SEZ license. It is important that the provinces know that they don't have to set up parallel authorities or structures. They can already submit their applications to the SEZ board, and SEZ board can review those applications and grant license to either set up free trade zones or industrial parks or other special economic zones like marine industrial zones and so forth.
The reason why we are staging this press conference is perhaps threefold. The first one is to directly speak to the country and all stakeholders about the need to follow the SEZA Act process in creating and establishing special economic zones in the country, and thus discourage and do not follow the track of setting up separate legislations for creating special economic zones. So that's the first reason. The second reason is to tell the country that the Special Economic Zone Authority is open for business, and that we will be engaging more intimately with different stakeholders around the country on the setting up of SEZ and the development of SEZ in the country. I'd like to speak a little bit about the SEZA Act and the need to follow the SEZA Act in establishing the special economic zones in the country. International best practice of special economic zones in many countries tell us that there is always a national unified legislation for establishing and developing SEZ. A little bit like you're playing soccer or rugby, where you have a field, but you have a set of rules that you play. But the players are different. The techniques and the style of playing may be different, but you follow a set of rules in a unified framework. And so the SEZA Act was created by and passed through the Marape government in 2019 to provide a unified framework for SEZ creation, coordination and development in the country. Now, the purpose of the SEZ Act, apart from creating and developing SEZ in the country, is that it provides a set of rules so that when players and developers and operators of SEZ come into the country and they're involved in the SEZ business or enclaves, they follow a set of rules that apply to all. All right, so you have a unified set of rules funded in the SEZ Act of 2019, and that set of rules is administered and regulated by the SEZ Authority, which is us, and we are the board. In recent times, there have been attempts by different stakeholders, and particularly public and private developers, in rerouting the national unified framework and absconding from that and using the leeway of private members' bill to set up Special Economic Zones Authority. By doing so, that route abrogates the existing unified national framework to set up SEZ and therefore to coordinate and ensure that the SEZs, whatever they're developing in the country, follow a set of rules that are unified and found across the country. And so the SEZA Board and the SEZA Authority have very grave concern of establishing special economic zones through the conduit of specific standalone legislations that deviate from the Special Economic Zones Authority Act of 2019. We have serious concerns about that, and we say strongly to dissuade and discourage those that are trying to do so for a number of reasons. Number one, it is contrary to best practice. It really deviates from the idea that you have a national unified framework that have a set of rules that apply to all, and therefore the set of rules in terms of SEZ development will be properly regulated by a competent authority. In this case, it's the SEZ. So when you set up separate legislations, it brings in us in a whole range of problems. Number one, the regulatory framework will now be different, so you find it in different legislations. Number two, it will be very, very difficult to police and enforce. How could you police and enforce if you set up SEZs using specific legislations that are particular to that particular SEZ? It will become very difficult to enforce regulations and therefore have a unified development of SEZ in the country. But more fundamentally, I think is that the national government would want to have a sequence and timely phased development of SEZ. Once you open the window of having SEZ established freely using specific and standalone legislation as people feel like it, then the national government loses control. It cannot properly regulate and cannot properly control the phase and magnitude of development in SEZ, and this is our primary concern. And that's the reason why in 2019 the Marapre government came up with a unified national legislation that would govern the way in which Special Economic Zone Authority established and created. The other thing that has to be mentioned is that the SEZ Act gives leverage for the SEZ Authority to deal with and agree with through a range of memoranda of understanding and agreements with competent authorities, be it the IRC, be it customs, be it IPA, so that when people come into the country under the conduit of the SEZ, we make it easy for them by working through those competent authorities. And the only entity that is working now with competent authorities is the SEZA Act. And so if we have to give a set of incentives for SEZ players around the country, we deal with the IRC, and therefore we give those incentives, whether it be in tariffs, in taxation, etc., to all the SEZ that are playing the playing field of the SEZ development. Now, if you assume for one moment that if every SEZ is set up by its own regulatory framework, then the question becomes, who now deals and regulates those SEZ, and who deals with the competent authorities that are supposed to be making the job of running businesses, incentivizing business, and make it easier in the country. The other concern that we have is that once you open the window of opportunity by creating an SEZ through a special members bill, it's akin to taking the regulatory powers of the SEZA Board. And therefore, anybody who wants to set up SEZ can do so without going through merit and economic feasibility of setting up SEZ. If they feel like creating it, they just go through the conduit of private members bill and set it up, without basically looking at the critical enablers, without looking at the incentives, without looking at the reliefs, without looking at how competently they can work with competent authorities. So if you remove SEZA from the equation and all that, you now would allow each man and each person who wants to create a SEZ to use the conduit of private members bill and therefore establish an SEZ, which would create problems for everybody else, and that's our primary concern. Without mentioning the fact that the SEZA Act in Section 16 states explicitly that the authority to authorize the establishment of Special Economic Zones Authority under the legislation is given to the Special Economic Zones Authority. And if the authorization does not come from the authority and it would like to create your own entity by way of an act of parliament to establish an SEZ, then it brings into question the legality of that creation. And it creates, I think, a lot of complications insofar as the legal establishment of SEZ is concerned, without following the proper process of the SEZ authority. The other concern that we have is, take for example the banking industry. If you want to set up a bank, you have to apply for a banking license and go through the quality assurance and the approval process, meeting the standards, competent standards, through the central bank. The SEZ Act follows the same principle. If you want to start an SEZ, you have to go through the SEZ authority. And the authority was established so that the minimum standards are complied with, so that people who want to develop or operate SEZs meet those minimum standards. So if you don't have a conduit whereby the approval process and the setting up of SEZ is filtered and the minimum standards are imposed, then there is no need for an authority like ours. By principle, if you look at Bank of PNG, there's no need for bank. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can set up a bank. So our main concern in this, insofar as the authority is concerned, is that if you start setting up SEZs through the use of private members' bill, then every private member who comes to Parliament and all that can set up an SEZ. You don't necessarily need a compliance process that ensures that standards are met before you set up an SEZ. And that's our fear. And I think in the long run, if that is the attitude that we're going to take in this country, we will kill the concept of SEZ before it even takes traction and development in this country. And so we are mindful of the fact that the Marape Rosso government has placed emphasis on SEZ as an alternative to the non-renewable sector. And so for years, PNG's economy has been dependent on the non-renewable sector, the extractive industry. And so what the Marape Rosso government is doing is that it's looking for sustainable alternatives so that the country can be progress forward using those sustainable alternatives without necessarily relying heavily on the extractive sector. And the SEZ concept is a key vehicle that is driven by the Marape Rosso government. And so we want to support that concept by ensuring that there is a unified national framework. We invite every party who wants to set up an SEZ. The SEZ authority is open. Come through the authority, come through the process as specified in the Act. The authority will have a look at, the developer operators who are intending to set up SEZ, and we will ensure, through the provisions in the Act, there is a merit-based process of approving and allowing SEZ to operate in the country. So, having said that, I think in due course the Special Economic Zone Authority will be traveling to the country, engaging more deeply with the stakeholders for them to understand the concept and see how best we can facilitate and help them if they are willing to set up an SEZ. And the Act provides for many areas in which an SEZ can be set up, and so we're looking forward to engaging, encouraging and helping all the stakeholders, particularly in the provinces, to set up their special economic zones.
Just a particular emphasis on the level of support already given to SEZA. It's been a journey since 2019, inception of the Act, and a lot of activities have taken place to ensure SEZA is where it is now. So that includes government support, department support, and it has taken a while to come to this stage. So it's not an easy road to take just by legislation and then you have something popping up. It's also about understanding the SEZA concept, the special economic zone concept, especially a lot of capital expense that needs to be put into creating such an environment for a special economic zone to be in. So with the powers that be and the current play of private members' bill trying to replicate, it's already been emphasized here that there should only be one regulator. That's already in motion. There's a lot of resource input into it. Why duplicate? Why have another regulator, so to speak, in place? So to the powers that be that are making decisions in Parliament in trying to entertain a private member's bill with all the reasons stated by the chair and the deputy. There's already government commitment. This is working. There's plans to engage with stakeholders. If, like the deputy said, it's a level playing field for everyone, especially for the provincial governments. They just need to focus on the infrastructure. The authority is already here. You just need to comply with the key requirements. I think there are 31 or so prescribed by legislation. If you need more information, you consult the CEO at the office to get more information, rather than feeling left out. No one's been left out. So all stakeholders that are interested, the SEZA is open for business, well supported by current Marape Rosso government, and a big credit to Minister for Trade and MITI, Minister Maru, for really pushing this, and I hope the other leaders also respect that there needs to be only one. And of course, if we have different regulators, it's also a bad signal to investors. I see it as a sovereign risk, because then, like what the doctor said, you can't have two regulators trying to entertain banks in the country. Therefore, of course, with special economic zone activities as well, there needs to be only one. And so it's been a long journey since 2019, a lot of effort. Why try to create hurdles and disruptions when all is going well so far? We are on the verge of having a permanent CEO soon, and more engagement with stakeholders at the provincial and also with business houses, employers. There is an opportunity for all. As long as for businesses you tweak your strategies to ensure you are also into exports, then you can get into this SEZA discussion and be able to benefit from the concessions that you will gain as a result of being registered with, regulated by SEZA. And like I said, with the provincial governments, rather than trying to replicate, concentrate on the infrastructure within your province, because empirical evidence suggests that key enabling infrastructure is a must before you can talk about special economic zones in your respective provincial governments. So that being said, I think it's well stated, so I can't emphasize more. But I'd just like to thank the government once again for giving continued support to SEZA, and SEZA will have to deliver and is on its way to delivering on its mandate. So let there be no disruptions. Thank you.